Hello, and welcome to My Favorite Games, a podcast for game designers to geek out about games they like to play and maybe watch and observe. Today, I'm super excited to host Dexter Dakota from Barely Suitable Games. Dexter calls himself a high-functioning sociopath, which have to ask a few questions about in a second. But he's also a former restaurateur and generally fun guy to be around. During COVID, he decided to get out of the restaurant business and make board games. Why? Maybe he'll tell us. I hope he does. Otherwise, this might be a pretty short conversation. But Dexter, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
So before we dig into the game that you've kind of brought with you today, and we'll dig into your career shift in a bit, but have you always played games? Do you define yourself as a board game player?
No, not at all. No, I played like every kid did. You play Monopoly with your family on holiday, etc.
And so why are games of interest then?
I had a friend a couple of years ago that I worked with. He wanted to open up a restaurant. I was consulting, and as we started talking, he started talking about his game collection, and he's one of those guys that has probably 300 games. The fascinating thing to me was that he knew all of them. There weren't, 100 on his shelf that he had never even opened. He had opened everyone, he had played everyone, he could spout off the rules to everyone, and that was just fascinating this time. And as we were talking, I'm learning more about people that, love these kinds of games. And I had not even realized at the time there was this kind of resurgence, and a lot of independent publishers had come out. Years ago, we had done comic books just as a lark, and during a time where a lot of independent comic book makers were out there. So it was one of those well, hey, maybe I can go out there and have some fun with it.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I'd love to get into the mentality in a second. But before that, today you brought in a set collection card game called Sea Salt and Paper. Tell me about it. What do you love about it?
First of all, I got an advertisement on Facebook, and I like the name. I thought it was just a little kitschy. Obviously, salt and pepper. So it feels like three plays on words: sea salt and paper. Salt and pepper. I like the play, and then the art on the cover was origami. They had just digitally created, but still it's origami. And I thought that is just a gorgeous little game, and it's a box with a deck of cards. Super simple. Loved it, and so I purchased it, obviously, and it is. If I was marketing the game, I would never say this, but for me personally, it's a glorified Go Fish. You're trying to make pairs, or this one will even give you the opportunity to do triplets and quads. But you're basically collecting cards, trying to match pairs, and then the more pairs you have at the end of the game, you win. That's the oversimple version.
So what's special about it? You said it's a glorified Go Fish, but clearly there must be something a little bit different, at least to spark your interest. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's the art is always what I look at first. Okay, if you could, because I with restaurants, going back to that, I loved. I have this habit of finding kitschy little phrases and then not remembering what they mean. So sooner or later, I make up their own meaning for them. Okay, so there's an expression called a credibility gap. All right. And I take it as the distance between what you promise and what you deliver. Okay. Quick restaurant example. If you walked into McDonald's and you got the best burger you've ever had in your life, that would be weird. You would go, what is going on here? You know what that looks like. You know their promise when you walk in the door. And when they don't deliver, whether it be great or awful, it's not, you're taken out of the moment. They talk about in movies the willing suspension of disbelief, right? You want to be entertained to a level that you don't care that science doesn't work. You know what I mean? Or you don't care that there should have been a scene there. Like, how did he get from here to here? Why didn't they let me know? But if you're entertained, you're just eating popcorn and enjoying the movie, right? So that was the biggest thing. So when I see something that just is gorgeous, and this packaging is gorgeous, and I thought, well, I wonder what that game is that's so pretty, And yeah, so I love the idea of the origami. Because it is just again such a simple concept that can get so complicated. And I wondered if there was going to be something like that in the game. One side note: when I started reading about it, apparently there are colors that can be identified better by colorblind people.
Oh, yep,
I'd
yep.
never even thought about that before. But yeah, they used specific colors so that colorblind people could still use the game. Now I know it's a small percentage of the population, but it's just kind of cool that they were able to do something like that. So
So with it, was there a credibility gap with Sea Salt and Paper in terms of like why? So you bought it because it's beautiful. Yeah.
out of 100, a 1 to 100,
Yeah.
2. I'd give it a 2. Like yeah, like
Interesting.
almost nothing. There's never a perfect score, right? In that theory, right? But less than 10 is to me is just absolutely amazing, and that's why even after I bought it and I watched a few demos and I did a little demo myself to see the playability to see the balance in it,
Yeah.
and I was fine. I was fine with it, but it was just something that was really like, like, oh my god, it kind of is. It's a little creative. It's a twist on something common. It's kind of pairing even a few things together. This kind of rummy like game with this origami like nature, and just at the end of the day, any game that you can learn in 10 minutes and master in a couple of hours, a couple of gameplays, that's interesting to me.
So is the reason why you like it or why you find it interesting because it's like it's doing what it says on the tin, or is it the fact that it is such a basic twist off of something that's existed before, or is it both?
It always ends up being both. If I'm going to play the game, if I'm going to really enjoy the game and tell people about it, it's going to be those components. Is it good, fun to look at? Is it relatively easy to learn? I'm just not a guy who wants a game that takes 4 hours to set up and 2 more hours to get started and blah blah blah. But I also do like games that are simple to learn, but they're challenge levels. There's tactical levels to them, right? So I would definitely say the reason I saw it or noticed it was because of that. The reason I picked it up was because I read what I read about the gameplay and that I loved just a single deck game. But I bought it and I started looking at it, and yeah, the other stuff just kind of fulfills that ideal, So yeah, so every time I learned one more thing about it, that credibility gap got a little bit smaller, and then that is ultimately why I'm going to do it.
It kind of reminds me in terms of the way that you're talking about it, maybe a slightly more simplified version, but there's a game called Skull King, for example. That's I don't know. Again, I think the makers of Skull King would disagree, but it is a kind of glorified version of Up and Down the River, which is a
Okay,
traditional 52 deck card game, trick
right.
taking game. But in a similar way, I'm so impressed by something like Skull King because it's massively popular. It's pirate themed. But if you do look at the rules and if you play it and if you play Up and Down the River, you'll see certain similarities that are glaringly obvious, but they've just taken the one or two things that make Up and Down the River a bit harder to have fun with because you're limited in terms of your 52 deck card thing, and they just change them. They just add little rules, add little special cards, and that kind of like uh, let's not mess with something that's working. Let's just remix it in a way that's slightly different and
Mhm.
slightly introduces something new. I guess that's what all game design is, or some would argue that's all what all game design is. But I don't know. It does feel like kind of elegant in if you wanted to think of it from a mechanics perspective, a bit of a forced constraint that you get to work with,
Mhm.
but you have to introduce your own spin on it.
Sure. Well, and there's two ways to do that. Right? You can adjust or swap out a mechanic, okay? Or you can, what they do with how many games get reskinned all the time. They basically, like I'm sorry that I'm mentioning Monopoly twice in this conversation,
That's
but
okay.
but you can buy Scooby Doo Monopoly. You can buy I don't know whatever the other, or Clue is a game like that too. That I'm not fond of. Just reskinning it, But when you're working on it, when you work on a game like that and you say, I love this base mechanic, okay, I'm gonna like Rummy or Go Fish, and then you say, well, how do I make it my own? Well, what if I add this to the mix? What if I take away that? And it is challenging. You think I'm just taking away one little thing. If you don't mind, our other game, Quad City Killers, we have 3 dice, and they're 6-sided die, 1 1, 2 2, and ZZ are 0 0, right? So you say, well, essentially that's 0 through 6. You would think that it would be similar enough to 1 dice, but the probability is skewed so much with that little tiny thing, and it took us a while to get our heads around it because we wanted to do it because we thought the dice were cool. But no, it took a minute to really rebalance it, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so I'd be interested to see if some of the reflections that you have from games like Sea Salt and Paper, and what impact that's led to with your own game design. But specifically, your latest title is upcoming is Puny Gods, which is described as a dash cunning, trick taking, denounce your crap gods card game. So is that fair? And if not, why not? And tell me about it. What's it like?
Sure. I start with the idea of a title. I start title, then I go theme, and then I try to figure out the mechanics from there. Now, granted, that's
a proper
why
marketer.
Yeah.
You're a proper marketer.
Yes. Right. Well, and I got that from restaurants. That's what we did. We would go into a neighborhood and say, what's missing? What's not here? Like, I don't want to open up a burger joint next to a burger joint. I mean, maybe I can be better than them. What's the point? So with Puny Gods, I just love the title. And I'll be real honest with you. Part of the reason I put a little more effort into it than some of the other titles was because the domain was available. So nice. I got the domain for it, and I said, well, boy, I better make something of this. But I loved the idea that then the theme is you've got these villages or these tribes, and each of them has their own gods, their own relative gods, right? So, you figure if you look far enough back into this cultural religion is that, a lot of these small tribes because they couldn't imagine a god that ruled everything. So they had the god that ruled the sky, and they had the god that ruled the sea, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, well, what if there had to be some leftovers? There had to be some like brother-in-laws that just don't get invited to dinner, right? Don't get the mana, right? So
Hercules' crap cousin,
right,
yeah.
Right, exactly. So there's a comedian named Eddie Izzard, and he had a routine about gods, tremendously funny man. And he said, well, our god. He was rattling off his gods, and he said, Jeff, the god of biscuits, and I thought. I was thinking about going, that's what kind of gods we're talking about. Basically Jeff, the god of cookies, right? How do we incorporate him and what would he be like? And you start to realize, well, he wouldn't give a crap. Okay. He would be self-centered, egomaniacal. He would not be
He'd probably
helpful,
crumble under pressure.
He'd probably crumble under pressure. Right. So how could we create a game with villagers and then gods? And then how do we take those and put them into, this world where we could actually get rid of them, either kill them or pass them on to another village or another tribe. So that's where the whole thing started. And fortunately, like when we did our last game, I did with a buddy of mine, Adam. He's a tremendous artist. This one, I decided to do something a little different, where each of the decks is designed and drawn by a different artist. Okay, and we'll also, So there'll be. So there's a lot more playability. We'll probably end up with 6 decks at the end of the day. So you're playing with your own village, drawn by a specific artist, and these people are really talented. They really are.
So what do people do? Like, describe the game in terms of what a player might do.
I'll give you the first part first, and then you can decide what you want to hear next. So, all right. So you separate your gods from your deck, and you put them off to the side. Okay, and then you're going to deal yourself. I believe right now it's 7 cards. We're still tweaking. So it's 7 cards, okay? And then you play like a hand of hearts, okay? Where you go, somebody leads, whoever's going first, and then you have to follow suit. So like if they have a heart card or a fire card or a water card, you have to follow suit if you can. If you can't, you can discard, okay? And whatever is the highest card of that suit. So if you have like the 12 of hearts, and then you take that trick, you now belong to it, and then you get to take one of your gods and you get to decide what to do with it. The base level is give it to somebody else, or there are other tricks. I'm not going to give you all the tricks because I think some of them are fun little surprises,
Yeah.
But there are also cards that we're calling mythical beasts, and they're kind of like, like in Uno where you have the pick 4 or reverse or those kinds of cards, that kind of tweak the play a little bit. We have a few of those cards as well. So that's the biggest part of the strategy is how to utilize those cards to your advantage. So rather than taking a god, you might give a god to somebody else, that sort of thing, right? And then one of the things that we did with the hearts is that you play 6 hands. You keep one card. That way, like in hearts or spades or whatever, you're more inclined to try and figure out, oh crap, I don't want this to be my last card, so you might dump it early, that kind of thing. This way you always you have an extra card that if you just don't like it, you draw 6 more cards for the next round. You've always got a card that's never getting played.
And so how did you think about design, like mechanic design, when thinking about it? Like did like Sea Salt and Paper or games like that influence the way that you were thinking about it? Because Quad City Killers, if you want to explain what that is briefly, but like that's quite a different game, or at least it feels like it's a different game.
Yeah, very, very different game. Very, very different game. And I will tell you with no hesitation, that should not have been our first game. It was way too complicated, way too much for having never designed a game before. And also too, once we started, they had our friend who had the 300 games. We have a pal that's 300 games. He said, "Well, you're gonna have to play test this 200 plus times." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "No, thanks very much." And the biggest thing for us was, well, okay, well, why do you play test? And you play till it breaks. That's really the simplified version. You play till it breaks, and then you fix that thing. And so Adam and I did. I know I'm going off on a tangent. Apologies.
Nope.
Adam and I decided 2 things. One I got from Penn and Teller. Penn and Teller, if one of them doesn't like a bit or a gag or a trick or whatever, they don't do it. Okay, so if I came up with something and Adam didn't like it, it's my job to fix it or explain it so that he gets it, so that we're on. But we don't die on any hill. There's no mechanic that had to be in the game, no matter what, right? There were plenty of stuff that got lost early, and some of it got brought back later because we'd fixed a few things. But the other thing is that when it breaks, we fix one thing at a time. We don't say, let's try these 2 or 3 things. So that we always knew what was getting better and what was getting worse. So because of that, we played 75 games, but for our first game, I was very proud of that. That felt like a really good number considering everybody else was telling me 200 to 300, so. But yeah, it shouldn't have been our first game. This one, because I'm doing the game myself, as far as the mechanics and the building it, I wanted to see if I can do, again, a simpler game, and also too, when you're looking at the marketing of it, there are price points. There's a lot of games around the $20 mark, $20, $25. There's a lot of games that are 70 and up, and there's Quad City Killers ended up in that weird spot kind of between them. It was a little too expensive for an impulse buy, but it was a little too pricey, or a little not pricey enough that some people thought, well, maybe it's not very good. I never thought I would hear that the price would determine whether or not somebody thought it was going to be any good, Like I said, it took a long time because I was doing it myself and I didn't really have a lot of people to play test with. It's my family, but that was intentional. We wanted to just have some fun with it and see how it worked. But yeah, this is just, imagine instead of a room full of people, like 6 people all giving you ideas at the end of the game, versus me in my head giving me ideas at the end of a round, it was more interesting. I had more fun, but I made it tougher on myself for some stupid reason. So,
so when you're working with yourself, even though you're making it tough on yourself, and you're making decisions as to whether or not something is working or not, you seem to come at a lot of this from a marketing perspective. Do you find that and not necessarily from a huge background in games and game design and understanding different mechanics and having all sorts of things running around in your head? How do you then justify justify to yourself or argue with yourself when you run into a roadblock or a perceived roadblock in, let's say, in the self-testing of Puny Gods?
The biggest thing is, I really do. I really believe it's the ego. The people get this ego about them that they're a game designer. In the last few years of restaurant, 12 years or so, I did consulting, and I would go do a speaking thing, and they would say, "Oh, this is a branding expert," blah blah blah, and I would go, "No. I'm a student of branding. I love branding. Don't call somebody an expert." Okay, and you can call me an expert once I've retired or once I'm dead. Okay, that's just that's fine, but that was always the thing, is just I have no ego about it. There's nothing you can tell me about my game, good or bad, that I won't listen to. And that does come specifically from restaurants. we did on the one hand. Bill Hader has a great line about. He says, if somebody tells you it's broken, Bill Hader is a comedian. Okay, if somebody tells you the scene doesn't work or it's broken, always listen. Always listen. As soon as they tell you how to fix it, don't listen. Don't listen anymore. He goes, all your friends are right. If they all say this is crap, they're right. But when they tell you how to fix it, well, they're not directors, they're not writers, they're not actors, right? So that was kind of the thing. So I always listen, and I have plenty of people in my life that are willing to call me stupid. I got no problem, I got no shortage of honest friends, which is fantastic. Okay, but if somebody says this isn't working, but so I did the same thing with myself. If I'm telling myself something, this just doesn't feel right, or that was too easy, is always the biggest answer at the beginning. That was too easy. How do we complicate this? But then the other thing was just like we did with recipes in the restaurant, we would go, and if we wanted to, my last restaurant was a soup restaurant. We did soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Okay, so we made soup from scratch. Somebody would come in and say, "Hey, do you have a mushroom soup?" And I go, "No, but I can have one in a couple of days. No problem." And you go and you look at like 5 Hungarian mushroom soups, okay? You look at 5 different recipes, and you look at the thing that's the common in all of them, obviously mushrooms, right? But, and you say, okay, well, all of these recipes have these 3 ingredients. So this is where I'm going to start, And then as I'm learning, I'm just going to build it. I'm going to build the recipe based on those 3 ingredients and what I think will go well. And that's the same thing with the game, right? Just taking the thing that I like and say, okay, well, it's not working. What do I like about it? What is the thing I really like? And okay, well, let's try to save that. What's the thing I like least? Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah. So having no bones about the fact that you are taking advantage of what's out there, what's out there already, but also I come from a tech background, and so we have these concepts of problem solution fit, problem market fit, product market fit, design led growth, and product led design, and really just focusing on listening to what is the problem that you're having, or what is the opportunity that you're seeing, and then what is the quickest route to get there, even if it's ugly, so that you could then iterate on that and improve upon it. Which it sounds not dissimilar from the way that you're thinking about it. And I guess switching into restaurants, it sounds like that is where you probably, I don't know, cut your teeth most. I hearing someone say, "Oh yeah, I used to start and run and own restaurants, and now I'm a game designer." I'm thinking like, well, no shit. Restaurants is hard. Like that is the crucible with through which
Right.
you probably are formed, right? So talk to me about that, of like about life in restaurants, what that's taught you from a perspective of maybe just running a business, but also about how you are looking at game design on a strategic level, right? And maybe what you learned the most,
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you how I started in restaurants. I always loved to cook. I'm not a chef. I'm a cook. Okay. I believe firmly in that. I feel like that's probably the ego thing too. I just don't want it. I've met too many chefs over the years, right? So, but I grew up with my grandparents. My grandmother was a cook and the matriarch of our family. She took care of everybody. And fascinatingly enough, years later, she was in her 90s, and I spent the summer I got an opportunity to spend the summer with her, and she asked me, she said, why do you, my grandparents are Scottish, so, I'll probably break deeper into the accent, when I'm talking about them. But she would say, why did you go into restaurants? And I said, well, I love to cook. And she said, why? Why'd you love it? I said, from you. I learned it from watching you. I spent years in your kitchen cooking with you. She goes, oh, I never liked to cook. And I said, are you kidding me? And she goes, no. She goes, I just love taking care of people. And it was true. And it was one of those moments where even years later, I mean, I've been in restaurants for years at this point, but I went, oh my God, that's what I love. I don't love cooking. I love taking care of people. I love when somebody takes a bite of your burger and goes, oh yeah, that's good. It fills a little bit of that empty hole in your soul. You know what I mean? So my other thing is my other kind of primary rule is my grandfather would say there's 2 types of people. There's people who say, can we get it done? And people who say, how can we get it done? And if you say, can we get it done? One of the possible answers is no. So take that off in the beginning. You are going to run into situations you can't solve. you are going to have problems you can't fix. But why start with that option? That kind of thing. And that was how I approached it. And as I got more into restaurants, as I started this kind of journey, I guess they say today, I kept saying, well, I want to do interesting things. I'm not going to be a franchisee of a Wendy's, I'm not going to sell hot dogs if I don't, unless I could do something fun with them, I'm going to try to make everything from scratch in-house that I can. And it really did challenge me to do that. But I think that's why I did
Restaurants
well.
are hard.
That's why, they're really hard. It's, when people say that, they go, oh my God, you make so much money. You go, where are you from? And you don't pick a job where you work, 60 plus hours a week. Sometimes the only thing you get paid is what's left in the drawer after you've paid everybody else. Why do you do it? You do it because you love it. That's it. If you don't love it, get the fuck out, man. Why bother? Why bother with it? Why would you challenge, go get a job. There's lots of jobs that make pretty good money, that aren't so hard on your soul, but loved taking care of people.
What did I think that the central kind of connection between you loving to take care of people, I guess general host, you like hosting people, you like feeling like you are making them their life or their time a bit more enjoyable. I can see how that can shift relatively seamlessly into games. You are you're using your time to create an experience in a similar way to restaurants, but this experience just happens to be a bit more efficient. You make it once, right?
Yeah.
And then you just produce it multiple times. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. In business, they always say, what problem are you solving?
Yeah.
I am, it's easy to answer in a business like a restaurant. It's terribly difficult to answer in games. What a problem am I solving? You can tell me when, I'll listen, but I don't think I'm solving any problems. What to do on a Friday night? That feels like the problem I'm solving right now, and even with the opportunity for the mechanics, like you were saying earlier, that we really are just kind of borrowing, that the idea is to, what's the line? Good artists copy, great artists steal. Because
we'll say remix.
Remix. Yeah, if you make it your own, great. Then that's you've done the right thing. I
don't necessarily think of it as like a problem. There's the whole candy vitamin medicine. I don't know if you're familiar with that. At least in startup world, are you creating a medicine? Are you are you fixing a problem that's really there? Is it vitamin? Is it just like improving upon something, or is it a candy? Is it like entertainment? And those all have different buyer personas and approaches. And a lot of startup people think they're building a medicine, but they're actually building a vitamin, and that's where a lot of problems are. But when you're developing a candy, which you could argue board games are fall into that category, it's not necessarily about like solving a problem. It's addressing an opportunity, and taking advantage of that opportunity. And once you change those words, all the other language is actually quite similar.
Oh yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. I also think that it could be said for restaurants as well. You don't need a
totally,
restaurant.
exactly.
You need food, but I would love it. I would love my favorite times where we could share our soup recipes with people. I'm like, could we get the recipe? How much would you? I'm like, just take it. Go. If you go make soup at home, good for you, right? That's what I would love. Come to me as a treat every now and again. But yeah.
So restaurants. Restaurants to me seem like this incredibly difficult thing. You are working with people every day. You are having to manage people, and which is very hard in the best of times. But in the restaurant business, in the hospitality business, very, very challenging. You have really crap margins. It's food. Like you have all these things that to me are like no. But trial by fire, and then you have board games and you shift to board games and. Board games are can be quite solitary. You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to.
Right.
Right. And your manufacturers, you don't ever have to meet them. You don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. You can run ad funnels, to sell it. Talk to me about the transition. How did you go from intense, this is incredibly challenging and doing well at it, to I want something different. I want to go into board games.
Really, you just answered your own question. Doing that for as long as I did, It was. I loved the challenge. I loved waking up every day and going into work. There was nothing. I barely took vacations, and don't. I hate when people are like, "Oh my God, that's so sad." No, it's not. I loved what I did every day. Why would that be bad? But eventually, you get a little older, and as I started consulting, like I said a few years ago, it was good. I liked it. I liked being able to, because I was helping other people. And then this COVID thing came around, and COVID didn't break restaurants. I don't. Everybody needs to stop with that BS. Okay, what COVID did was it kind of brought to light a few of the problems that were already existed in restaurants.
Bit of a fire break.
Yeah, and I had probably 8 clients at the time when everything closed down. I called 4 of them and said, listen, I know everybody's closed, but let's continue to work. And let's see if we can get you ready for when everything opens up again, because it's going to be different. No. I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait until everything blows over and everything goes back to normal. And you go, nothing's going back to normal. Everything's going to be a new normal. There'll be a new normal eventually, but nothing's going back to normal. Fascinating thing. The other 4 called me and said, we're closed. Do you mind cutting us a little slack on the bill? And we want to work and we want to be ready. And those 4 still open. Okay. The other 4 all closed. All right. Now, to be clear, that's not because I helped the 4 of them. It's because they were forward thinking. How do we tackle this problem? This is, I like this idea. Fall in love with the problem, because it's going to show up whether you want it or not. So when it shows up, if you're excited to see it and ready to play, you got it, right? You're good. But yeah, no, that was the thing, and that made me realize that the new normal probably wasn't going to include me. I was probably old school enough that it just wasn't going to be my thing anymore. And I was okay with that. I did really good job. I left what I consider a mark, and some of my restaurants are still open. I opened 19 restaurants, 16 of them are still open. Actually, apologies. It's I don't count. Technically, I should say 15, but he closed from COVID, and that was 8 years after I sold it to him. So I feel bad about it, but still, I get you get it. But yeah, and then that was the thing, was just kind of, I tried a bunch of different stuff. I drove for Uber for a little bit just to see what that was like. I sold cars for a little bit just to see what that was like. And both of those sucked, but this was something that I could, I kind of fell into this, like I said, with a friend and a couple of friends. We were just talking about it one day. Sounded fun, turned out to be challenging, which I always like. That's the fundamental. Is the biggest difference is the challenges are still there, and they're probably bigger for me now because I was so used to doing things a certain way. But the timeline is a little more forgiving than it was before. A lot more forgiving. Nobody cares if I come out with Puny Gods tomorrow, last summer, next year. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? So,
but yeah. From my perspective, I care, and I want it to have come out yesterday. Like every single day. Especially coming from tech, it's like, it's going to take how long? Like, why? What's wrong? So barely suitable games. There's this kind of this playful kind of attitude and theme with the whole kind of ethos that you're putting out there in the world. The company, the brand that you're wanting to build, you have a history of building brands. What is it that you want barely suitable games to be putting out there in the world? And like, do you have kind of a brand ethos, especially being a brand and marketing guy, already set, or are you kind of still working that out?
I always look at it as, the Japanese term kaizen. You are always looking for perfection, but if you get there and you're done, what's the point, right? So you're trying to just kind of raise the bar, what have you. The idea with the original game was we just wanted to see if we could do it. We had no desire to be a company or anything like that, or at least I didn't. I just wanted to see if we can do a game, and we did a game. And it's like, what was it? Got a 7.8 on Board Game Geek. It's got, we've got some good reviews. We have whenever we do go to a trade show, we always have people come back and say, "Oh, hey, we got your game last year. We played it. It was really great." And they really played it if they go, "Yeah, this one card, I think there was a typo on it." And you're like, "Yeah, I know there's a typo." But shortly after getting it together and through our kind of journey of figuring out how Kickstarter works, we said, "Oh, we probably should come up with a name." And the joke with Quad City Killers, it's a serial killer board game, but you play as competing serial killers, okay? And so my buddy goes, well, can we make this family friendly? Like, I don't want to like a lot of bloody, gory, and and I'm sorry, but in actual serial killers, there's a lot of rape, a lot of kids. We don't want any of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so we came up with the line, family friend or murderous fun for the whole family. So a family friendly serial killer game. How do you do that? Okay. And that was just, and I think I had said, well, that's barely passable, or like, our idea was a barely, going to get it there. And I thought, who, and of course you're thinking, well, who is this suited for? And at some point you go, well, it's barely suited for, for families. I mean, you got to be an open-minded family. You got to have a little tongue in cheek, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it just kind of started that. And we thought, you know what, that's not terrible. Barely suitable is not terrible. So this idea that we are games that are acceptable. You can bring them to your party no matter who your party is, but know full well 1 out of 10 is going to go, nope, not going to happen. I'm not playing a serial killer game.
And you have, so the idea, you also have an NSFW expansion and other kind of, you do have elements for people who want a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Be a little bit bolder.
And we play into that too. Like, where, I think one of our marketing for the expansion pack was, where are the kids? Hopefully they're not playing the NSF, where, not safe for work expansion, and stuff like that. But yeah, it is, we don't want anybody to think we don't know who we are. Okay. Yeah. We want everybody to understand that we're comfortable. We are humorous. Somebody looked at a review of, or looked at a mock-up of Puny Gods, and he said, is this a silly game? Is it a fun game? And I went, oh crap, I screwed it up. The box isn't right if you don't know that it's a silly tongue-in-cheek game, right? So, but yeah, it was just that idea of like, I love the idea of being on the skirt. I love like the outskirts of an idea, Yeah. I love the Groucho Marx expression. I would never join any club that would have me as a member. That's solid. That's just solid. I'm fine with that. So.
And so you mentioned, you went on Kickstarter initially for Quad City Killers. You decided to go on Kickstarter again. Talk me through that's just like the business case or the decision making process as to why Kickstarter versus like pitching to a publisher or some other route. Like what went into your decision making there? And have you changed things this time round compared to the Quad City Killer launch?
Yeah. Actually, we did Quad City Killers. The first one, I was still under the impression it had a lot more to do with the Kickstarter community rather than being a place to focus your community. Okay. So we did launch a Quad City Killers. We did a couple of things. One is that our goal was too high. For being a new game, for our price point and what have you. And fortunately, we had somebody that we learned this because somebody went on there and said, and messaged us and said, love what you're doing. Didn't try to sell me his services, which is always the reluctant, right? But he said, no, well, he goes, let me just, do you mind a couple suggestions? I said, yeah. And so we talked about it. Halfway through the campaign, we were half funded. Okay. And we thought we could have possibly made it, but let's regroup. Okay. So, and we used some of the things that he talked about where we lowered our goal to like the bare minimum that we needed. Okay. We did take the shipping off of the Kickstarter goal. So it was, we knew what we were getting for it. Right. And then we also did a few things with the marketing that changed. We didn't spend a lot of money on marketing. We spent a couple $100 on Facebook. So once we relaunched, we had all of we were able to relaunch within 3-4 weeks of when we closed the first Kickstarter, when we shut down the first Kickstarter. That was fortunate because we got almost everybody back from the original Kickstarter within 2 days. And that. And without, going through the funneling and the market and all this other stuff, a couple $100, and we had all those people back. So we were half funded in 2 days. All of a sudden it's a different world, right? So, but yeah, so that's that we didn't go to publishers because we weren't going to be a game. We just wanted to do it. Once you do it and it's real and it works, then you say, I want one in my hand. And our choices were go to one of those one-up places that'll print a mock-up essentially, or do the Kickstarter so that we could have funded. It didn't even dawn us in the beginning to go to a company. Granted, yeah, of course, it wasn't like I didn't think there were any companies doing that, but I didn't think it was suited for that because it was that serial killer aesthetic, And to be clear, no guns in the damn thing. We kill with sporks. You know what I mean? Like this is
Yeah,
this
my
is
spork
humor,
is
I
stronger
feel
than
like.
your spork or
Yeah,
something.
yes, exactly. Well, and then, but yeah, we didn't think it was suited, so we thought, well, let's not, challenge ourselves with the Sisyphean task of, of going there. Let's just get it published. Let's just print up 3,000 copies and what have you. We went back we're going back because we have built an audience there. I don't remember how many, people on the original Kickstarter, and I think that we will get some good feedback from them. We've gone to a couple of shows, a board game show near Quad Cities, and they invited us as their special guest because we did a Quad Cities themed game. It was hilarious. It was one of those ridiculous things that there's only 600 people at this show. It's a tiny little show, but everybody there was serious. Everybody there wanted to play and wanted to learn new games and stuff like that. So it was really
and 600 buyers of board games. Not
solid, right?
Nothing
solid.
to sneeze at.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that we've met some great people now, and they're following us on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. We have emails for a couple of people. A few people, not probably not even our giant list, but so we have ways to contact those people. So why not it worked. Don't break it, right? Or don't.
Yeah, totally, totally get that.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, really interesting. So Puny Gods is coming to Kickstarter. What are you working on next? Are you working on any other games? Coming up. What's next in general?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm sure if you've ever looked at designing a game, you have to have 2 or 3 that you're working on, right? Because you're just gonna hit walls every once in a while, and rather than continue to beat your head.
Yes.
So we do have, but they are the same. We have names. I don't really have much of anything, although I am leaning towards, as we get if we reprint Quad City Killers, we're probably going to condense the game down a little bit and take it from a $40-ish game to a $25-ish game, a little smaller box, a little less components. So we have one name. We want to do a game called Duck Puncher, because ducks are bastards. That's our, I have no idea what it's going to be.
That's the hypothesis.
That's one of the ones that I'm really, really digging on right now. And then I saw an image of a card game that and it was just a demo, there was just a prototype. Okay. And what it was is you had all these cards kind of in a circle, almost imagine pieces of pie, but they're cards. Okay. And the only thing that he was saying in his little thing was, that somehow the cards on your left and your right are going to affect your card, as you're playing. And I thought, so you essentially have 4 people, and then there's cards in between you two, and you could do that. Now, somebody told me there was a game that already did that sort of thing, but I just love the idea of it. That you have a plan, and your neighbors are constantly not thwarting you, not nope, you can't play that card, but that your card is a little more valuable or a little less valuable, something along those lines. And the working title right now is Steady on the Right. So we're just doing this idea. Yeah. That's a very British, style expression, steady on the right, or maybe a nautical, or something like that. So maybe that'll be there. Have you seen the game? It's on Kickstarter right now. Deep Regrets. Have you seen this?
I spoke with Judson,
oh, that's right. You told me that before.
Yeah.
Oh my,
fantastic game.
Cool as all get out. That guy is just a good dude. I talked to him, and and his art is gorgeous. Gorgeous, and it sounds like from the reviews. That's another thing too. I hate watching trailers for movies, and I don't want to know about the game before it's available for me to play. You know what I mean? So, but I looked at the reviews. He's got really good reviews. He's 3,000% funded. So happy for him. He's like I said, I love when it's a good dude, right? But it's gorgeous, and so I saw that and I thought, well, maybe that. I said Steady on the Right is a mechanical thing, so maybe there will be, a nautical theme. So maybe there's maybe I can do a little bit of an oceanic kind of, board or whatever, and then play a sister game. Those are kind of the 2 primary ones. There's also an expression. I think it's Filipino, but it's aga aga, which just means a little bit. Okay, and where I heard it was. It was a Gordon Ramsay show, and he was with this woman who, honestly, you could have told me she was 120 years old, and I'd have believed you, and he's trying to get the recipe for this dish that she's cooked, and because he loves it, he's like, this is amazing, and he goes, will you give me the recipe? And she goes, well, I'll have to show you. And so she takes him into the kitchen and they're just throwing stuff in a pot and he wants measurements, right? You know, he's Gordon Ramsay. And he goes, he puts like a seasoning in, a season powder in, and he goes, aga, aga. And he goes, what? You know, a little bit, meaning just a little bit more, right? And he goes, why don't you just tell me how much you put in? She goes, I don't, you know, like kind of an I don't know reason. No, sometimes I do this, sometimes I do that. It almost sounds a little Yiddish, but you know, but yeah. But so aga is one of our, if we can make that work. We did a side note, as you said, what else is going on? We have a game. You're aware of like Werewolf and those kind of social deduction games, right? Okay. We thought it'd be fun to do a quick little game that we could give away, a couple of cards. Okay. So it's 7 cards, I think. What it is, it's called Everybody Knows You're a Banana. Okay. So the cards are, one's a snake, one's a banana, and 4 are monkeys. And then there's also an instruction card, okay? So you can play with 7 people, up to 7 people. Whoever's the monkey's trying to figure out who the banana is because he wants the banana, but he's trying to avoid the 4 snakes because he hates the snakes, right? And you can play with a 7th person who we call the drunk narrator. And so he can lie. He can say, I looked at the cards. He can not look at the cards. It doesn't matter. But he can lie to try to get you to choose wrong. You know, he doesn't get to win ever. But it's one of those, right? So if they pick correctly, the monkey and the banana win. If they pick poorly, one of the snakes wins. It's a stupid little family game. It's a very family-friendly version of that werewolf game, you know? So we thought it was a throwaway. We thought it was just something more fun to give away than a pack of stickers. You know what I mean? And we had people coming back because we gave it away with the game, right? So people coming back, families, especially a couple with young kids, and they were like, they just would not stop playing this game. It was so much fun, blah, blah, blah. That's and awesome. We're like,
that's so cool.
Maybe we should, maybe we should sell it. Maybe we should stop giving it away if people like it that much. But yeah, again, just fun, just slightly off kilter, you know, just a little to the left, you know, what have you. Not politically speaking. A little
yeah, of course.
I don't know if we're left or right. I got nothing on that. So cool.
Yeah. Steady on the right and steady on the left.
yeah, exactly. Maybe that'll be the companion game, right? Yeah. steady on the left.
Yeah. Well, Dexter, thanks so much for taking some time to share your experience and to geek out a little bit about sea salt and paper with me today. If anybody would like to find out more about Barely Suitable Games, you can find them on Instagram and Facebook with the handle Barely Suitable, or by going to barelysuitable.com. Puny Gods is coming soon to Kickstarter, which you can find a link for in the description, along with a link to their Etsy shop as well. Dexter, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun.